It is good morning from Chicago and San Jose, Costa Rica, but good afternoon or good evening to you, depending on where you are located. We are glad that you could join us today for MAI's webinar, From Thesis to Book, Making Information Accessible. Warm welcome to you, and thank you for being here. Grateful to see 169 from 51 countries register for today's webinar. It's so encouraging to see a big number of participants signing in. I'd say this is one of the highest number of registrations in the history of MEI webinars. And very special welcome to those of you who are joining an MEI webinar for the first time. If this is you, please click on raise hand. You can see raise hand at the bottom of your screen. Just click that if that is you who had joined us for the first time. Oh, a lot of you, Gabrielle, Diana, Rick, Suzanne, Winifred, Michelle, Ray, Sue, Timothy. So many of you, Karen, Divya, have joined us for the first time, attending an MEI webinar for the first time. Thank you very much for being here. This is Ramon Rocha of Media Associates International. Ian, I'll formally introduce you shortly, but please briefly greet and welcome our friends from around the world. Just say hello, hi.
Hello, so hello everyone from Costa Rica and Central America. It's great to see so many people connecting to this subject. So obviously an important subject for lots and lots of people. So it's great to see you all.
MEI's reason for being is to help equip and encourage global Christian writers and publishers to create life-transforming materials in their heart language and in their local context, that these publications will help strengthen the church and impact society. We encourage you to interact with us and with each other in this webinar by using the chat for your comments and the Q&A for your questions. You can type in your questions even while Ian is presenting. This is a 1-hour webinar and it's being recorded, and we will send you the link to the recorded version within today. By the way, one of you asked if he could see the closed captioning in the French language. Yes, we've enabled that feature. Just click Show Caption at the bottom of your screen and then choose the language you would want to see the AI-generated closed captions that would appear on your computer screens. It can be in French or Spanish or in other languages available. Today, we are so privileged to have Ian Darke as our speaker. When Ian became a Christian during his teen years, he had lots of questions about faith, life, and the universe. So friends lent him books that helped him. And he's been a lover and an advocate for the written word since. At university, Ian studied pure mathematics, taught for a while, and then worked in student ministry with IFES, at first in the UK and then in Peru. It was during that time that he saw how few relevant resources were available to students and to the church in general. So around 1992, with no experience, together with a group of Peruvian friends, they formed a publishing ministry called PUMA, which continues to grow to this day. Ian has been involved in the publishing ministry ever since. And in the late 1990s, Letra Viva, a network of publishing ministries in South America, was born. Ian has been the coordinator of Letra Viva since its formation. Ian coordinated the publishing of the landmark Latin American Bible commentary that was published in 2019 after 12 years of work that included contributions from more than 100 writers from each part of the continent, many of whom have never written before. Ian's latest book is called From Dissertation to Christian Book and was released by Regnum Books, the publishing arm of the Oxford Center for Mission Studies in the UK. We are so happy to have Ian. Welcome, Ian, and please present your material. for today.
Thank you very much, Ramon. And it is, again, great to be with you and share with you. As Ramon said, my passion has been for books in different forms and different ways over many, many years, mostly in Latin America. And we, as Ramon said, we were very struck years ago, and it still continues to be the case, that within the countries of Latin America, often there are not enough books that are relevant to people, to their growth in their heart language, the type of Spanish which is most relevant to them, and particularly written by local authors and can address issues in a way that's most appropriate. Then in more recent years also, we've been in touch with various folk who have had the privilege of studying abroad and doing a dissertation and a thesis, and who have then thought, okay, what do I do with my thesis now once it's been finished? How do I convert that into a book? And so we've been sort of thinking about this sort of issue for some time. And then in recent years, actually in contacts with friends from other parts of the world, realizing this is not just something that's an issue within Latin America, but also is an issue in other parts of the world. What do you do if you have a dissertation or a thesis and you want to use it to produce a book that is very much needed within our world? So just to kick off, I just if you could just help me, what do you think are some of the differences between a thesis and a book? Can you just put them in the comment thing? Just off the top of your head, some of in the chat, some of the differences between the two. Yeah, the style of writing. Yeah, books can be really academic and difficult to read. Yeah, who they're aimed for, the format of the thing, very formal, very the audience who you're doing it for. Yeah, thesis is an academic text aimed for the jury of your who's going to award you a master's degree or a doctorate or something, not for the public. And yeah, somebody said the examiner has no choice about reading the thesis, but nobody will read your book unless he wants to. That's a very good point. Yeah, great big thesis. Who's actually going to read it? Yeah, there are lots and lots of differences between a book and a thesis, and we're going to touch on some of those as we go along. The length, the type, the style, the focus, the number of subjects covered, a lot of different things are different. And what I want to share with you, first of all, is the 4 M's to remember, and I like using mnemonics, as they say, 4 M's. The first one is the message. What is the message of your work? In a thesis may have lots of different ideas. You might be summarizing investigation in the past. You may be summarizing things that will happen in the future. Lots of different ideas and different chapters.
Excuse me, Ian. Are you going to share your screen? Your PowerPoint?
I can do. Yeah, I was.
Okay, yeah. Sorry.
Right, don't worry.
Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay, I will. Here we go. Yeah. So oops, sorry. The first thing then is your message. Your thesis can have lots of different messages, and it also may not have very clear messages. Your thesis may be an investigation into a certain issue, but it doesn't have a very clear message. And one of the chief things that people who have worked in this area say is you need to think about what is the core message of your thesis. Now, it may have more than one core message, but what is the key thing you're trying to say? And can you summarize that in a short sentence? What will be helpful to the reader? What would be of interest to the reader? What is novel or useful to the reader? All these we summarize them by saying, what's the core message or a core message of your work? If I can come back to oops. How do we, sorry, I'll have to stop scripting. Apologies for my confusion on this. Another question for you. Again, thinking about books. Okay, we've thought about Now, the difference between the two. When people go into a bookshop and they see a book and they pick up the book, what do they normally do when they pick up the book? What do they look at when they pick up a book? Any ideas? Do they read the front cover, the back cover? Yeah, front covers, look at the back. Yep, exactly. They read the back cover. And what do they look at on the back cover? What sort of thing do people look for when they're looking at the back cover? Yeah, synopsis, very good. Endorsements, a summary. What's the book about? But yes, what's the profile of the author? Who is this person who's writing the book? They want to know what's the main idea? Who is it meant for? What is it meant to do? What is the book aiming to do? These are all things that people look for when they are, if they pick up a book. Now, supposing you're writing your thesis was on the history of the church in your region. You can have a lot of information about that in your thesis, but your book would need to be something that's very different. Maybe a brief summary of a section or interesting part of your history, something that will be really inspirational and people will really want to read. Now, it can be difficult sometimes to think out what is the key message of your book. Amongst all your research and all the time you spent doing your research, you tend to think that all of it is important. And it can be helpful to find a couple of friends, wise friends, who can look at your thesis and say, look, what's really interesting here is this or that. So that's the first thing, really, is to look at what is your core message, a key message. So that's the first thing. The second thing is what you might call your market. Now, that sounds very commercial, your market, but just think about, I'd like to think about a little local market we have around the corner from where we live, and people are there with products to sell, fruit and vegetables and so on. So you're in direct contact with the people, and they will buy your bananas if they want to, if they think they're good and tasty or not. So it's your market is the people who might read or buy your book. You may prefer the word your public. Who are your potential readers? And maybe then the question is, who would actually buy your book? Now, the meaning of the word publishing is to make public. Now, a lot of people tend to think, well, what they really want to do is to see their work in print and have their name on the cover and feel very satisfied. But that is not publishing, that is printing. Publishing is making public your work, what you've discovered, what you found out, what you want to share, is making it public. So then the question is exactly what public are you going to reach? Some people say, well, my book is for everyone, but everyone doesn't exist. People exist in certain groups. Your public might be a group of pastors in your area. It might be young people. It might be those all over your language group, or the French speakers in Africa, or it may be just people in your hometown. It's very important to work out who your public is. And again, you need to ask who will benefit from reading the book, who will be interested in reading it, who are your potential readers. Where would your book be placed? Where could you put your book so that people would buy it? Maybe in a church bookstore or in a bookshop. Where would it go? And in what section of the bookshop or the bookstore would it go? Is this a biography? Is it a book about current affairs or a book about a Bible study? Who would read your book? So this is very important that you're in touch with your public, in touch with your people. You can't be on an ivory tower and have your book and launch it into space. You need to be very much in touch with your people. So if the book is for pastors in your country, You need to be in contact with them, listen to them, know what their concerns are, and see how your book might be appropriate for them. If you're writing a book for adolescents, are you working with adolescents? Do you know how adolescents think and feel, the language they use? You need to be in touch with your world, your public, your market, if you like, to know how they will, whether they're feeling and whether they will actually buy books or read books. You're going back to the example of you're writing about the history of the church in your country. Maybe this has inspiring stories that could be of an inspiration to pastors. Or maybe you've got inspiring stories that actually would be really interesting for children, and you could produce a children's book, or maybe more than one different book. Don't think that your thesis has to be one book. You can extract bits to make different possible books. So that's then thinking about our M's. We've looked at your message. What's the core message of your book, or a core message? Your market or your public. Who are you going to sell it to? Who will buy your book? Who are your potential readers? Then a third M I wanted to include here is your motivation. Why do you want to publish your book? And I think this is important for, it will affect the way that you produce it, what you do with it. First of all, very clear, if your motivation is to make money, forget it. Publishing books on the whole does not generate income. So if your motivation is to make money, I would recommend you look somewhere else. On the whole, it is difficult to produce books. It can be costly, and the best you can aim for is to recoup your expenses. However, there are many other good reasons or motivation for producing a book, and this will affect the way you progress. Your motivation may be to impact the church, to help the church grow. It may be to challenge Christians to think biblically about a certain subject. It may be to develop a ministry, maybe your own ministry, the ministry you're involved in. If you're involved in a ministry with helping preachers, the book could to help develop that ministry. Or if you're working with children with disability, again, the book could help develop that ministry. It can open doors. I know countries where a book has been produced, a Christian book, but it's so rare that a book is produced by a person from that country that the book was actually put on television and the person was interviewed. A book can open doors depending on where you are. The influence a book can be in secular world if it's done right. Maybe if it's on a matter of ethics, and it could be actually on sale within a secular bookshop, for example, to connect with non-Christians. This is all part of publishing, making it public, thinking about who your public is and how you want to react, how you want to relate to that public. This is publishing. Somebody asked about difference between printing and publishing. Printing is just literally getting print on paper. But that's not the issue. That's not what concerns us. That's easy to do. Publishing is actually making it public, getting that book out into people who will read it and with whom it will have an impact and an effect. So just ask yourself, what is your motivation? And of course, the chief motivation should be, as Christians, to bring glory to the Lord, and not so much to bring glory to ourselves or make ourselves feel good or, wow, I have a book that's published. But our chief motivation, obviously, should be, as Christians, to bring glory to the Lord and give him honor and respect that is due. So that's the third M. Sorry, I just lost my notes. That's the third M. to question your motivation. Then the fourth one is then to just apologize for this moment. No, all right. Your fourth one is to make the text work. That's your fourth M, making the text work. Now, we've talked about the difference between a thesis and a book. A thesis, as we've said, people have said before, that the thesis, it can be very, very long. It can have all sorts of material in it, like a bibliography, an introduction, a summary of the history of the subject. And one of the key things you need to do is to prune your work. And what we mean by that is to cut out material using a gardening image to cut out a lot of material from the book. For example, the bibliography, most of the bibliography will be irrelevant. Part of the summary of previous research can be irrelevant. Somebody said that the best thing you can do is just take the conclusion, maybe the introduction and the conclusion, and that could be a book. You need to do a lot of cutting out. Then secondly, you need to do weeding and tidying up. Again, thinking of a garden. You pruned your trees, you got rid of a lot of stuff. You then need to take a lot of the dry stuff out, take the weeds out, and to get rid of a lot of phrases that are very dry, and to rewrite maybe with a specific reader in mind, giving life to your text, to add color to it. And then also, so if you imagine a garden, you've got rid of a lot of pruning, you're weeding, you're changing the wording from dry phrases to something that's a lot livelier, a lot more interesting. And then again, think of a garden, you then might want to plant some bright color. Basically, a thesis, it can be very dry, but a book needs to be lively and warm. So one thing you can do in your thesis is put yourself into the book. In your thesis, you don't write in a personal way. You don't share your own experience. In a book, you can. You can give examples. You can use the word I. You can share information, examples, and make it a lot livelier. Change the style completely. These are all things you can do in a book, and are very important to do, adding color, personal experiences, and yourself. So that's a whole process. Now that can take a long time, and you may need help again, somebody to help you do that, and to help get something that's a lot livelier, a lot more accessible to people. So that's the fourth of the M's, and then oops, sorry. That's the fourth of the M's, and then the question is, what do you do now? You've spent your time looking at your thesis. You've looked at clarifying what your message is. You've thought about what you really want to say and communicate through your book. You've thought about who you're writing for, and it's a public you know and you can relate to, and you're aiming to write your book for them. And you thought about your motivation. What's your heart motivation? Is it just to see your book in print, or to make yourself feel good, or is actually to really bless the church, bless God's people, and give glory to God? So what is your motivation? And then all the hard work is a lot of hard work, radical pruning, weeding, tidying up, adding color, making the text work, reducing maybe 800 pages down to 100 pages. This will be quite drastic, and you have to cut out a lot of stuff because you can't include everything. Although, as I said, you can have more than one book coming out of this. So then the question is, what do you do now? You've got your book, it's in decent shape. And nowadays, there are really broad speaking, three options for you. First of all, the traditional publisher. This is the publisher who we all know of, these big names. or people who publish books. Now, there may be ones in your city or your country, Christian publishers who might be interested. And the recommendation with them is do not send your manuscript. Just send an initial letter, just a simple letter saying who you are, what your book is about, and share it with them. And they will get back to you. And they will ask you questions. For example, in what way is this book different from books that already exist? What is new about your book? They will have all these sort of questions. But that's a traditional publisher. And if you can publish with them, that's great. On the whole, they may pay you royalties. They may pay you royalties simply in giving you a number of copies of the book. Depends on type of publisher. Many publishers are struggling to survive, and so don't expect huge amounts of money. If you're a famous novelist, you may get a lot of money from publishers, but not if you're a beginning writer. Okay, so that's traditional publishing. Then self-publishing, as the phrase implies, is that you yourself do the publishing. And this covers a whole range of things. Now, in some places, you can actually go to a printer and get 1,000 copies of a book printed, and you yourself can then sell them. This can be very risky because you may be over-optimistic, and you may think lots of people want to buy it, and you then get 1,000 printed, you pay for the printing, and then you've got boxes and boxes of books filling up your home, and you're only selling a few, or you're giving them away to friends and family. So you need to be very careful. But then nowadays, there are all sorts of slightly more sophisticated options on the web, and you can find out details of those groups where you can send the manuscript, and they will do the work of tidying it up and putting a cover on and producing it using, for example, print on demand. Now, print on demand varies a lot from one area to another, but these are new technologies which are possible. And also the possibility of producing it as an ebook, for example, on Kindle. So there are lots of options to do with self-publishing. And then nowadays, there are a number of hybrid publishers which combine traditional and self-publishing. And they may be more like a traditional publisher in a way that they know how to market the book and promote it and so on, but they may require you to put in some money for the initial stage. So there can be a number of different options there in terms of hybrid publishers. But I didn't include a fourth category, and that is of unscrupulous publishers. There are some groups around that promise to publish for you, and they promise that they will promote your book, and they may send you very warm emails saying how wonderful your book is, and they will sell lots and so on. But they can actually be very, very unchristian and very unhelpful. So, yeah, just be careful. Just be careful. There are lots of different options. And then whatever you do, however you are going to publish your book, whether it's with a traditional publisher or self-publishing, you need to find out how to build trust in your book. And this may seem strange, but we mentioned before when we were looking at the difference between books and a thesis. People look on the back cover. Amongst the things they want to know are who is the author? Who is this person? Who is this person who is presenting this title? Now, you may not be very well known, but you may have certain credentials. You may have been a pastor of a church. You may have worked with a ministry. These things are right and good to include. You can also have you can actually also include recommendations from people. Maybe you've got friends who can affirm who you are and say that this really is a very good book. Maybe it's a well-known author or well-known leader who can do that for you. Nowadays, many publishers will expect you to have a platform on social media. And for many of us, this is challenging and difficult, and we don't like doing it. But it can be for many people, it can be the key thing to be known because you're on social media. People know you. You can be sharing, for example, information about your subject matter. You could be writing little articles. You can build up a certain group of friends and contacts, maybe using little videos or sharing articles. There are all sorts of ways in which you can use social media to do that. So that's social media. And then also, yes, you may be known as a speaker. You may be sharing the same subject. I know this is difficult for people who are nervous and shy, but it is something that you need to work out how to do this, maybe using recommendations of others. So these are some of the okay. So I'll get myself back here. Your publishing options and building trust, your credentials, building a platform on social media, recommendations from other people. There are all sorts of other ways you could do this that you can investigate. I'm very aware that there's a lot of different things here, and not that I want to promote my own book, but I have just written a book called From Dissertation to Christian Book. And it's not actually, I can tell you, it's not particularly original because I've not written that much in it that is original, but I've just compiled tips from all sorts of places. So if you are interested, you can obtain that book. It is available in Amazon and other places and on Regnum Books. But I want to tell you a little secret. If you go to the Regnum Books website, which is here, regnumbooks.net, and find it, and you'll see when it's for sale, and it'll say, give you the two options, in print or as an ebook. If you go to ebook, you will then find the cost is $0 because it's printed as an ebook under a Creative Commons license. And so this becomes, for you lovely people, totally free. So do feel free to look for that on that site and download that book. Yeah. I'm just looking again. Yeah, somebody just said they just bought that book from Regnum. Yeah, is it an ebook? Very good. So, okay, that's I think as far as we can. I think we can pass back to Ramon now. Is that okay, Ramon?
Sure. Thank you so much, Ian. That was really very helpful. As BP
So we
said,
raised through things very quickly. So you know,
yeah.
I'm aware of that.
Yeah. So yeah, practical and really informative. And James said I purchased it the other day, your book.
Those who can buy it and pay, that will go to the publisher, not for me.
But
I don't get
you can get it for free, as you said.
Those who can buy it with
a free ebook through through that website. Well, we are open for questions, and one question that came in: with the digital age now upon us, what is your recommendation on printing a book and having it digital?
What's the difference? Sorry.
Should you should you do it both?
Oh yeah.
Printing a book and also having a digital edition of it.
Exactly. That's right. I think that's a very wise thing to do because you have different readerships, and for many people, actually having the book in print form is the best form. And in fact, if it's a book you want to make notes of and underline things, it's best in print form. And but on digital, obviously, huge advantages on digital. But not everyone can read digital books because they don't have the means. So there are advantages to both. And if you look at modern, many publishers now in the US or the UK, in fact, they're producing books in 3 formats. They're producing them in print form, they're producing it in digital ebook form, and also in audio form. So maybe that's a step too far at the moment, but you might be able to think, depending on your book, actually producing it in audio form. That's a growing area. but certainly having it in print and in ebook. And actually, many of the people providing ebook facilities and ways of distributing ebook also will handle the print form because they use print on demand. So there are a number of different providers, including Amazon themselves, using their Kindle and their print book form. And I know publishers in the south of Argentina, for example, who produce books in that form because they can't physically send from the south of Argentina to the US or other places, but they can produce them on the Amazon platform, both as ebooks and print books. So my recommendation, if possible, to go for both at the same time. Yeah.
Very good. Yes. Thank you, Ian. Julia is asking, what is the third aspect of building trust? And she missed your slide.
Right. Yeah.
Third aspect of building trust.
Yeah. Well, I put platform, having a platform on social media is one thing. Yourself being known as a speaker or as an expert, as it were, that will be the second one. And the third one will be recommendations from other people.
Recommendations from other people.
So having a network of people who can say, yes, he or she knows what they're talking about and their material is good and we recommend it. So the more you can find those sort of recommendations, the better. They will help a lot. Nowadays, it's very rare for a book to be produced and in look in a bookstore and it's a new author and there's little information about the person. Those books do not sell very well. But if the book has an endorsement, a recommendation from somebody well-known, that changes it completely. Yeah. So it depends where you are, how well you are known in your area, who you're trying to reach as well. Yeah.
Well, social media is a challenge as most of us cannot keep up with posting on social media. Yeah. I thought other people are using blogs or articles. They write articles and post it on the internet.
Yeah,
exactly. A blog, so it could be a monthly thing. You have an article up there, so that's also a way to.
And it doesn't need to be expensive. There are ways of doing a blog that can be completely free and enable you to produce material and so on. Mm-hmm. But I think you need to keep up to date with your target audience. You know who you're working with. Mm-hmm. For example, I'm more or less use Facebook, but younger friends say, "Oh no, Facebook's just for old people." So
Instagram.
yeah.
So if you're Instagram now, or
you might be interested to know that quite a lot of big German publishers are using TikTok quite seriously, and they have TikTok advisors producing little short videos on TikTok, and there are book clubs using TikTok, which I think is extraordinary. I have no idea how it works, but I think depending on where you're with and what they, what people are using, you need to venture into this, even though some of you, some like me, might find this all very challenging. Yeah.
Rick Cress is asking, does your book give details or a pathway of how to prune weed?
Yeah, it gives tips. It gives
more
tips on
details on how to
pruning, surgery, radical
surgery,
whatever you want. There are other books available. I think I referenced them that also give tips on how to do this. And it can be, you may find you've got a friend nearby who is very good with language and can help cut out unnecessary words. Certainly in English, there are many words that are totally unnecessary. And I think something like, I really hope that. The word really doesn't do anything. You can cut out lots of words. Some people call it fog. So there are these words like really. You can actually use on the computer, you can go through and automatically reduce all the words really and just get rid of them. And all of a sudden your book shrinks as you get rid of these unnecessary words. So yeah, there are ways and tips on doing that, which help a lot to make your writing much more immediate. For example, shortening the length of sentences and making sure that each paragraph is one idea You don't have big rambling paragraphs. We all know there are great writers who break these rules, but for us ordinary people, we need to make sure we have sentences that are not too long and paragraphs that are not too long, but that have one idea in each paragraph. These are sort of, you can find these tips in many places, which can be very helpful.
What about getting an editor, Ian? When do you get an editor and
Right.
the services of an editor?
Yeah, that's right. An editor can be very helpful. Now, in many countries, you may find you don't know of an editor. There are freelance editors. Obviously, one advantage of working with an established publisher is that publisher will have an editor. Yeah. So that editor, your publisher, will help style and craft your book and get it into better form. You may find that for example, here where I live, there's a big university nearby, and people who have studied linguistics and so on who can help in those sort of areas, even though they may not be experienced editors as such, but they can help with editorial work. Maybe just somebody who's a very good reader, and they may not realize they could be an editor, but if you're looking for like a full-time editor to help, that may be a bit difficult. I feel that around the world we need more editors, more people who can go out and look for writers and help writers produce really good books. I think it's a great need around the world, and certainly we're praying for more people who are editors, as well as more people who are publishers and more people who are writers too. Yeah.
Especially if you're self-publishing, you really have to get an editor, because one of the criticism of self-published books is that it's not really properly edited, and it could be better. So
if you're really stuck, just find a couple of really good friends. In all this, it really helps to have a really good friends, honest friends who will tell you really how things are. You don't want friends who can read it and say, "Oh, that's great." You want friends who can maybe go through and say, this section here is really unnecessary, or this is confusing, or this sort of thing. Having some really good friends can be a great help. But as Ramon said, you really, particularly with self-publishing, you really need to make sure that it's as best as you can be.
Pedro, we are going to send the material, Ian's material, to everyone within today, including the link to the recording. So you will get Ian's slides. Gabriel Fabule is asking, Ian, what help do you offer to a beginner? do you have a printing company?
No. I've never been involved in printing as such. I've always been involved in publishing, which is now in the past, some publishers had printing companies. That was very common. So they had people who did the printing side, and then people who look after the distribution and sales, and people who did the previous work, editing and so on. Nowadays, I don't know of a publisher that also has a printing company. There are printing companies everywhere. Not many will print books in a good way. You have to be careful to find a printer or print a book, but a publishing company is different. Now, as far as I'm concerned, I work with a group of publishing companies. I can't handle any book suggestions coming in, and I only work in Spanish anyway. All I can do is say, go on the web and look for a publishing company and that is producing books in the style you like, to the type of people you want to reach, and with a sort of ethos and the philosophy that you're happy with, and contact them. And within Latin America, we have a network of publishers called Letra Viva, which networks together 20 publishers within Latin America. So if the book is in Spanish, you can go to the website of Letra Viva and find information on all 20 publishers. Now, some of those publishers focus on children's books or deeply theological books. So you you wouldn't approach a very theological, serious publisher with a book about domestic family issues, maybe. You have to look at the type of publisher and who they're reaching and the type of book they're producing. So just go on the web and look and investigate publishers and find which ones will produce a book or producing books that are on the style of yours. Yeah, sadly, I couldn't cope with revising too many different book projects, really. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Navu Shambor, we hope that this webinar is helpful to you, and you can review Ian's material through the slides that we're going to share with you, and also the link to the recording. Julu Swen, how do you extract the data collection portion from your thesis when you want to turn it into a book?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Theses vary so much, don't they? And you may have done a sort of really important research. For example, you may have done an investigation, let's say, in contacting all the pastors in your country and finding out their needs, and you've got data, statistical data. Now, perhaps it's unlikely that all that data could be in a book form, but there's a number of things you can do. One is you could actually, like in a blog, you can have a blog for your book, particularly for your book, where you put on your blog, like all the background data, the statistical data or the research or the interviews could be on a blog. And in your book, you just summarize and you say, you know, in a survey of 300 pastors in our country, we found out this, and you put the results. In some cases, you could have this as an appendix, but on the whole, if you've got too much sort of data and so on in your book, you're going to make it too big, because the bigger the book, the more expensive, the more difficult it is for people to read. So you need to sort of think through strategies there, how to make the material available, if that's appropriate, but to make your book as easy to assimilate. And so you've got the conclusions there, but without necessarily all the background information that you used in writing your thesis. I can't hear you, Ramon.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, I said that was really a challenge to weed out all the dry stuff and to go to the core of your thesis,
yeah,
and use that for your book material. It's as you know, that's really the big challenge for everyone who has done a thesis. It's so thick and so many number of pages. Which ones do you keep and which ones do you do you leave
I know
out?
some people feel a couple of tips. Some people feel that it's, as soon as you finish the thesis, it can be very difficult to then look at making it into a book straight away. Some people feel they need to leave it for a year or so because they're so close to it and they're so absorbed in it and they're so full of it, and they've read it so many times, and it's very hard to look at it in a fresh way. So sometimes to leave it for a while and then go back to it. And some people really feel that their thesis should be published as a book. And to be honest, I have found some examples where a complete thesis can be and has been published as a book. And in fact, just to mention a couple of examples, there's a thesis from an American university by an American researcher to do with the inclusion of people with disability in churches. And that thesis, almost entirely as a thesis, was published by InterVarsity Press of the USA. Now that book, the thesis, had lots of anecdotes in it. It did not have lots of statistics. It was actually very readable as a thesis. So that did actually work. And there are publishers who will publish an entire thesis. The Langham Partners often publish a complete thesis of those who have produced a doctorate with them. And there are a couple of German publishers who will produce a complete thesis. And that's great if you want to do that. But bear in mind, if you, for example, with some of these German publishers, if you produce your thesis with them, the book may cost, say, $150, be really expensive, and will be possibly bought by American university libraries and no one else. And also, if you do give them the rights to your book, you may not be able to then produce a simpler version because you sign away the rights. So you have to be a little bit wary. The friends at Langham Publishing, for example, they produce a complete thesis. I don't think they would have any problems if you then wanted to produce a simpler version. I don't think they would have that problem. But you just need to be a little bit aware.
Yeah. Several people have sent us encouraging words. Thank you, Rick Kress, for the kind words of encouragement and prayer for Ian and for MAI. Thank you so much. Yeah, Pascal Ratovona from Madagascar. Thank you so much, Ian, for your presentation. Ray Corpus, how about publishing a book regarding a ministry in a restrictive access setting?
Right. That's a very good question. And maybe I can bounce that back to you, to Ramon and others. I guess there are books published in the wider world about restricting access settings, and they have to be very careful. But is it a book that's meant to be distributed in a restricted access setting, or is it about the?
Yeah. So there are boundaries how you can. Well, a book regarding a ministry in a restrictive access setting. So maybe about China, something like that, or Muslim background area. Yeah, so those are challenges, and you have to, of course, talk to the publisher. And if you're going to self-publish, you have to know the boundaries up to how much information you could divulge. Again, not putting the people in danger. If by your book they will expose these people, and they might be
exactly. I don't have experience in that area, so I think you need to find people who have a lot of experience and wisdom in that sort of area.
Then Anthony Harrop is sending really his blessings to you. Blessings on your 20-year publishing ministry, Ian.
Thank you.
Suzanne, thank you so much both for this webinar and providing this book for writers. May your efforts bear fruit many times over in terms of equipping writers so that useful work is produced. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for your kind words. And we appreciate your being here and joining us for this webinar. Ian, before we close, I would like to ask you your parting words of encouragement for our people who have joined us for this webinar.
Thank you, Ramon. Thank you all. I would simply just like to encourage you, and I know it can be a challenge, but I'm just so convinced of the importance of the written word. And we've seen so many examples of where the written word has reached places that they couldn't reach otherwise. My daughter's an anthropologist, and she was in Cuba some years ago, and came across some Christians there who had a Christian book, where it was very difficult to access Christian books there. And she realized the book had been published by friends of ours in Peru. Nobody has any idea how it reached there in Cuba. But it was and it was circulating. And she looked at the book, and the lady, who's the pastor's wife, had no idea that my daughter had any link to a father who was in publishing. Inside the book, there were 12 signatures. And so she asked, why are there 12 signatures? So she said, this book has been shared by 12 people. She lent it to somebody, they signed their name, it came back. Lent to another, came back. So 12 people. And I know in many parts of the world, books are not just kept on a bookshelf somewhere, but they're lent out, they're given to people, they circulate. Books still have a tremendous power to impact society and the world. So just be motivated. Just try and work out how you can produce a book and go on producing books. We need more and better writers. We need more better editors and more better publishers. And just think of the long-term impact. There are all sorts of stories of people picking up a book that was written years ago and is left somewhere and picking it up and really being blessed. So be encouraged. And there are all sorts of new ways of opening up. And I'm sure through MAI, you'll learn of new ways of, for example, there are groups, for example, academia.edu. They can produce articles. They can just circulate articles and books completely free, and it's curious. But there are all sorts of ways coming up where you can disseminate what you're writing and on a blog through these different websites and so on. So be encouraged. Keep your eyes and ears open, make contacts with people, make friends with people, go to Lit World, learn more, keep watching the webinars. And yeah, let's just encourage each other in this tremendous work, in this complicated world in which we live, with so many new challenges and new pressures and so on. The world needs good Christian books with good Christian teaching that's biblical, that's relevant, impact and change lives. So every strength to you all. Keep writing, keep publishing, keep working.
Thank you so much, Ian. That's really inspiring and encouraging. I remembered a verse in Ecclesiastes that says, "Of the making of books, there is no end." So books will be part of our lives here on earth. And let's be writing and publishing good Christian books that help people, help the church, impact society, and give glory to the Lord. Ian, you mentioned Let World. As many of you here on this Zoom call are aware of Let World, please be praying. Join us in praying for Let World. It's happening this November 3 to 8 in Puebla, Mexico. If you're not aware of that, please go to our website, maiglobal.org. There is still there's still time for you to register. But if you are not able, please help us, pray for Let World, that it will be a successful conference that for global Christian writers and publishers from around the world, and especially blessing Latin America for this particular Let World. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ian. Thank you so much for your time and blessing us with your presentation. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for today's webinar, and we hope to see you again next month. Do watch for our announcements of our next webinar. God bless you all.
God bless.
Yes, and keep writing.